This video is about Germany's secret weapons of World War I. Subscribe for more. In the dim light of a small, smoke-filled bar in Berlin, the air was thick with tension as whispers of war echoed through the room. It was the winter of 1916, and the Great War had plunged Europe into chaos. Soldiers returned from the front lines, their faces etched with the horrors they had witnessed. The patrons, weary and worn, leaned in closer as a man with a thick mustache shared tales of Germany's latest innovations, secret weapons that could turn the tide of battle. Among the crowd sat Friedrich Weiss, a young engineer in his late 20s, hunched over a glass of cheap beer. Friedrich had always been fascinated by the mechanics of war, his mind constantly churning with ideas that could help his country. When the call to arms had come, he had enlisted. But as the war dragged on, he found himself back in Berlin, tasked with developing the very weapons that would decide the fate of nations. For him, defeat was not an option. As the conversation flowed, Friedrich's eyes darted around the room, spotting a familiar face emerging from the shadows. It was Klaus Emler, a former classmate turned military officer, his uniform snug against his frame. Klaus was not just any soldier, he was privy to secrets that could shatter the delicate balance of power across Europe. He approached Friedrich, an intensity in his gaze that spoke volumes. "Friedrich, I need to speak with you," Klaus said, pulling him away from the crowded bar. Outside, the chill of the Berlin night enveloped them. "It is about the new weapons our scientists are developing. They are more advanced than anyone can imagine." Friedrich felt a surge of excitement mixed with unease. The Germans had been working on various projects, including the infamous Zeppelin raids and chemical warfare. But Klaus's tone suggested something more sinister, something that could change the very nature of warfare itself. Friedrich asked, glancing over his shoulder as they stepped into an alleyway. "What are they creating?" Klaus hesitated, his breath visible in the cold air. "I can t-shirt everything, but there are whispers of a new machine, one that can breach enemy lines and devastate entire battalions. It could be the key to winning this war." Friedrich felt a chill that wasn't just from the winter air. "What will it take to create such a weapon?" Klaus leaned closer, lowering his voice. "There is a risk. The scientists are working with unstable materials. If they fail, it could mean disaster not just for our enemies, but for Germany itself." The gravity of Klaus's words settled heavily on Friedrich's shoulders. As an engineer, the allure of progress was intoxicating, but this was a line he had never wished to cross. "We need to be careful," he warned. "If the Allies discover what we were doing, we could lose everything." Just then, the sound of a scuffle erupted from the end of the alley. A figure stumbled into view, a ragged soldier who barely managed to stay upright. His uniform was tattered, and his face was smeared with dirt and blood. "They're coming," the soldier gasped, collapsing at their feet. Friedrich's heart raced. "Who is coming?" he demanded, kneeling beside the man. "The British. They've got spies everywhere. They know about the experiments." Klaus exchanged a worried glance with Friedrich before shaking the soldier. "What do you mean? What do they know about the new weapons?" The soldier wheezed. "We send agents to disrupt the project. A barely escaped. You have to warn the scientists." Friedrich's mind raced as he processed the information. The secret weapons project was more vulnerable than they had anticipated. He glanced at Klaus, who was already contemplating their next move. Without warning, a shot rang out in the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots pounding against the cobblestone streets. The two men exchanged worried glances, knowing they had little time to act. "Come on," Klaus shouted, pulling Friedrich away from the soldier. They dashed down the alley, the cold air stinging their lungs as they raced toward the military laboratory where the weapons were being developed. Their minds were filled with the weight of their mission. The very future of Germany hung in the balance, and the Allies were closing in. As they navigated through the back streets of Berlin, they knew they had to reach the heart of the operation before it was too late. Unbeknownst to them, a network of spies was already at work, planted deep within the German ranks. The Allies had their eyes on the espionage game, and they were relentless. Each move Friedrich and Klaus made only intensified the urgency of their quest. Inside the laboratory, the atmosphere was electric, filled with the sound of machinery and the tense chatter of scientists. As they burst through the doors, Friedrich's heart raced. "We have to secure the plans," he shouted over the noise. But as he scanned the room, he noticed something unsettling. The scientists were frantic, their faces pale with fear. "What is happening?" he called out to one of the lead researchers, a distinguished man with grey hair. "We under threat. Our communications were intercepted." "They know about the Sturmgewehr, the new rifle we're redeveloping," the researcher replied, his voice trembling. "If it falls into the wrong hands, Friedrich felt the weight of the moment press down on him. The Sturmgewehr was rumored to be a transformative weapon, a rifle capable of firing multiple rounds without reloading. In the hands of the Germans, it could turn the tide of the war. Klaus stepped forward, urgency in his tone. We cannot let the Allies sabotage our work. As they strategized, the door swung open with a loud bang. A group of armed spies, their faces obscured by masks, stormed in, weapons drawn. The tension in the room skyrocketed as the scientists backed away, fear etched on their faces. Step away from the plans, the leader of the intruders commanded, his voice cold and authoritative. Friedrich felt an adrenaline rush. This was it, the moment they had dreaded. They had to protect the secrets of Germany as war effort, and failure was not an option. Get the plans to safety. Klaus shouted, grabbing a nearby chair to shield himself. We'll hold them off. Friedrich hesitated, contemplating his next move. Time was running out, and the fate of the war rested on their shoulders. With a final glance at Klaus, he turned and sprinted toward the back of the Lau, clutching the documents that could alter the course of history. As he dashed through the chaotic scene, the sound of gunfire erupted behind him. He could hear Klaus shouting orders, trying to rally the scientists. The stakes had never been higher, and the battle was far from over. The clock was ticking, and every second counted. As Friedrich burst out of the back door into the cold night, he knew he had to reach the safe house where they could hide the plans. But little did he know that the Allies were already closing in, and the real fight for Germany's future had just begun. With the fate of nations in the balance, Friedrich took a deep breath and sprinted into the darkness, determined to protect the secrets that could either save his country or lead to its downfall. The mystery of Germany's secret weapons was only beginning to unfold, and the war was far from over. Friedrich raced through the narrow streets of Berlin, the chill of the winter night biting at him like 1,000 needles. The precious documents clutched tightly against his chest were more than just blueprints. They represented the culmination of relentless work and ingenuity that could change the course of the Great War. Behind him, the sounds of chaos echoed in the lab, punctuated by shouts and gunfire. He forced himself to focus, each step down the cobblestones echoing a stark reminder of the responsibility weighing on his shoulders. As he turned a corner, he spotted a dimly lit alleyway leading to a safe house. He had frequented this place during his university days, a nondescript building that concealed its true purpose. It was here that he had spent countless hours sketching designs and dreaming of innovations, oblivious to the impending doom of war. Now it served as a refuge for secrets, and he had to reach it before the enemy could strike. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed in the distance, growing closer. Friedrich's heart raced as he darted into the alley. He could hear the muffled voices of his pursuers, a reminder that time was slipping through his fingers like sand. He pressed himself against the cold brick wall, breath shallow, waiting for the footsteps to recede before making his next move. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye. A figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked and hooded. Friedrich tensed, ready to bolt until the figure lowered their hood, revealing the familiar face of Elise, a fellow engineer and trusted ally. "Friedrich, thank goodness," she whispered urgently. "I was nearly," he replied breathlessly, glancing back toward the direction he had come. "They know about the Sturmgewehr. We have to hide these plans or we'll lose everything." Elise's eyes widened, the gravity of the situation dawning on her. "We need to get to the safe house now. If they be sent spies, we are not safe here." Together, they slipped through the alley, eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Elise had been working on the communication technology that would support the new weapon system. Her brilliance in engineering was as sharp as Friedrich's. In this moment, their fates were intertwined, both desperate to protect their work and their country. As they approached the safe house, Friedrich felt a flicker of hope. But that hope was quickly extinguished as they rounded the final corner. The entrance lay ahead, but standing guard outside were 2 armed men, uniformed and alert. One of them shouted, raising his weapon, "Identify yourselves." Friedrich's mind raced. They had to think fast. "We were here to deliver important information for the weapons project," he called out, trying to sound authoritative and calm. "We need to speak with Klaus." The guards exchanged dubious glances. "Klaus is busy. State your business or turn back." Elise stepped forward, her voice steady. "We have sensitive documents that could save the project from sabotage. If we do not get in now, everything will be compromised." The guards hesitated, caught between their duty and the urgency of the situation. In that moment of indecision, Friedrich seized the opportunity. The British are already inside. A sudden explosion interrupted him, the force rattling the air and sending dust cascading from the walls. The guards jumped, their focus momentarily diverted. Friedrich exchanged a quick glance with Elise, and without a word, they dashed toward the door. Inside, the atmosphere was frantic. Tables were overturned, and scientists were scrambling to secure their work. Klaus emerged from the chaos, his face flushed with urgency. "You made it. We thought we'd lost it. We need to move the plans," Friedrich shouted, breathless. "The Allies are onto us, and they were already infiltrating the lab." Klaus's expression darkened. "We'll take them to the secure bunker beneath the building. It is the safest place." As they hurried through the narrow corridors of the safe house, the sounds of conflict grew louder, reverberating through the walls. Friedrich's heart raced, every beat a reminder of what was at stake. They reached the bunker entrance, a heavy door reinforced with steel. Klaus quickly inputted a code into the lock, and the door creaked open. Inside, the bunker was dimly lit, filled with cluttered desks and mats strewn across the walls. They worked quickly, carefully laying out the plans on a table while keeping one ear tuned to the sounds of battle above. Elise joined them, her hands deftly securing the documents. "We need to find a way to counter the Allies," Klaus said, his voice low but filled with intensity. "They'll send more spies, and we can't let them disrupt our work any longer." Friedrich nodded, scanning the room. Maps of Europe covered the walls, dotted with markers showing troop movements and strategic positions. "We need to use diversion tactics. If we can draw their attention away from here, we might have the time we need to finish the Stengier and other projects." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from above, followed by the unmistakable sound of boots storming through the safe house. "They were here," Klaus hissed, fear creeping into his eyes. Friedrich grabbed the map and pointed to a nearby area marked with an X. "We can set explosives at this location. It will create a massive diversion and draw their forces away from us." Klaus looked at the map, considering the implications. "It is risky. If it fails, we'll be trapped here. Everything we're working for hinges on this," Elise added, her eyes fierce. "We can't let them take our innovations. We have to fight back." Friedrich felt a surge of determination. "Then it is settled. We'll split up. Klaus, you coordinate with the remaining scientists to prepare the explosives. Elise and I will defend the bunker and hold off any intruders. We can't let them breach this door." As they moved into action, Friedrich felt the weight of his decision settle heavily on him. The stakes had never been higher, and every moment counted. With his heart pounding, he took his position beside the door, ready to defend their last bastion of hope. As the door rattled under the pressure of the intruders, the sound of gunfire erupted once more. The battle was raging on two fronts now, the fight for control over the weapons project and the fight for their lives. The air thick with tension, Friedrich prepared himself for what was to come. Klaus asked, just before they heard the loud crash as the door finally gave way. "Ready," Friedrich replied, his voice steady. The moment the door swung open, chaos erupted. The Allies poured in, but Friedrich was ready, aiming his weapon at the first intruder through the threshold. With a fierce determination burning in his chest, Friedrich knew that this was a pivotal moment. The fate of Germany and perhaps the course of the war itself depended on their ability to hold the line. As the first shots were fired and the battle for survival began in earnest, Friedrich's resolve solidified. They would fight, not just for their secrets, but for the very essence of what it meant to defend their homeland. And with each passing second, the stakes only grew higher, setting the stage for a clash that would echo through history. Little did they know, even as they fought to protect their own, the ripples of their actions would soon reach far beyond the walls of Berlin, intertwining the forces that spanned continents and decades. The war was far from over, and the next chapter was about to unfold. The door exploded inward, scattering wood splinters as the intruders surged into the bunker, weapons raised and ready. Friedrich steadied his breath, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he faced the immediate danger. First man through the door was met with a sharp retort of gunfire. Friedrich's aim was true, and the intruder fell back, a look of shock frozen on his face. The moment had come to defend not just their secrets, but their lives. Klaus shouted, diving behind a table as bullets ricocheted around the room. The air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and the chaos of conflict. Elise, wide-eyed but resolute, ducked beside Friedrich, her hands gripping a pistol she had hastily grabbed from Klaus's desk. "We can't let them breach the inner perimeter," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "If they get in here, it is over." Friedrich nodded, instinctively moving closer to her. "If we can just keep them at bay long enough for Klaus to finish the explosives, we might create the diversion we need." "This isn't just about the plans anymore," Klaus added from behind the table. "They'll be looking to capture us. We can't let that happen." His eyes darted toward the bunker's sole entrance, where the enemy was regrouping. Friedrich shifted his weight, preparing for the next wave. If we can secure the entrance and set off the explosives at the same time, we can funnel the forces away from here. It is a two-pronged approach. We'll draw them out and hold our ground. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a map pinned to the wall, detailing their various projects. The plans for the stone jail were highlighted, and he felt a surge of rage at the thought of those plans falling into enemy hands. "Police, cover me," he said as he moved to the map. As he scribbled quick notes on the map, police fired off shots, each one finding its target as intruders began to hesitate. The sound of gunfire echoed in a confined space, punctuated by shouts from outside the bunker. The Allies were relentless, but Friedrich's team was equally determined. "Reinforcements are coming," one of the intruders yelled from outside. "We have to push in." With renewed fervor, the foe surged forward, determined to overpower the resistance within. Friedrich could feel the tension coiling tighter with each passing moment. The door shuddered under the pressure of their assault, and he braced himself for the imminent breach. "Friedrich, now!" Klaus shouted, emerging from his cover with a handful of explosives. He rushed to the corner of the bunker, setting them up strategically. "Cover him!" Elise cried, her shots ringing out like a drumbeat of defiance. She moved closer to Klaus, her aim steady as she fended off the attackers. Friedrich glanced at Klaus, who was working with focused intensity, sweat glistening on his brow. "We have to make this quick," Friedrich urged, his heart racing. "How long until they reset?" "Just a few more seconds," Klaus grunted, securing the last charge. "Once I set this, we need to fall back and prepare for the explosion." A loud crash signaled the intruders' determination as they battered the door with renewed vigor. The wooden frame splintered, and Friedrich's stomach churned with urgency. He had to protect their secrets, not just for Germany, but for the potential future of warfare. "Get ready," Klaus shouted, a final click echoing as he armed the explosives. "We're going to need every second we can muster." Friedrich turned to Elise. "On three, we fall back. 1, 2, 3. They pivoted, retreating toward the inner room while Klaus prepared to ignite the explosives. The door finally buckled under the relentless assault, crashing inward with a deafening roar. Friedrich's heart raced as he took aim at the incoming intruders, his breath steadying as he concentrated. Klaus shouted, and with a swift motion, he triggered the detonator. A shockwave resonated through the bunker as the explosives detonated, flames billowing out from the entrance. Force knocked Friedrich and Elise off their feet, slamming them against the wall. The sound of chaos echoed in their ears, intermingled with the cries of the intruders outside. "Get up. We need to move." Klaus barked, scrambling to his feet. Despite the disorientation from the explosion, Friedrich pushed himself off the ground, adrenaline fueling his limbs as he and Elise followed Klaus into the next room. The bunker had transformed into a maze of flickering lights and thick smoke, making it hard to see or breathe. They stumbled through the haze, guided by the instinct to survive. The sound of gunfire faded, replaced by a cacophony of confusion as the enemy grappled with the destruction they had unleashed. "We're in now," Elise gasped, her voice strained. Klaus waved toward a hidden passage in the back of the room. "There. We can use the service tunnel to exit the building. It leads to the sewers." With a sense of urgency, they dashed toward the newly revealed tunnel, the air thickening with the smoke and confusion of competition and betrayal. Friedrich was acutely aware of the danger lurking behind every corner. Just as they reached the entrance, gunfire erupted again, this time closer than before. The Klaus shouted, pushing them through the opening ahead of him. Friedrich barely had time to glance back as he squeezed into the narrow tunnel, the darkness enveloping him like a cloak. Elise followed closely, and Klaus was right behind them, his determination unwavering. The tunnel was dank and claustrophobic, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. Friedrich's heart raced as he led the way, instinctively knowing that their survival hinged on their ability to escape the grasp of the adversaries pursuing them. "We have to find a way to communicate with command," Klaus said, his voice low but intense. "If this gets out, they'll know we survived, and they'll send reinforcements here. We cannot let them intercept our work." As they navigated deeper into the darkness, the tunnel began to branch out, leading toward various routes from the city, but every step echoed with uncertainty. The Allies would be hunting for them, and each moment spent in the tunnels was an opportunity for disaster. "Do you think they'll find us?" Elise asked, her voice echoing uneasily in the confined space. Friedrich paused, contemplating the enormity of their situation. "If they do, it will be due to the plans. They cannot find the documents. We can't allow that." Klaus nodded, his brow furrowed. We need to reach out to our allies in the field. They're as though telling how much they know. The sound of distant footsteps reverberated in the tunnel. Friedrich's body tensed with fear. We have to hurry. They reached close. They pressed on, adrenaline pushing them forward as they maneuvered through the darkness. Each turn felt like fate's cruel twist, leading them through the labyrinth of shadows. The echoes of their footsteps were a reminder of the danger that loomed behind them, an ever-present specter. Suddenly, as they turned a corner, they stumbled upon a large chamber. The flickering light from a lone bulb illuminated the space, revealing a series of crates and equipment stacked high. The faint sound of water dripped somewhere in the background, creating an eerie atmosphere. Klaus stepped forward, scanning the area. If we can secure a radio, we might be able to contact the command and warn them. As they searched the room, the tension thickened. Friedrich's heart raced, aware of the stakes. The allies could be closing in any moment, and they had to act fast. Behind a stack of crates, Friedrich spotted a small radio set. He called, rushing over to it. This could be our lifeline. Elise and Klaus quickly joined him, frantically checking the equipment. It looks functional, Klaus said, his brow furrowed. Friedrich's mind raced, fueled by urgency. We'll find a way. We can't let this opportunity slip away. This is our chance to turn the tide. Just as they began to work together on the radio, the distant sound of footsteps grew louder. The allies were nearby, and time was running out. They had to finish their work before the enemy found them. Friedrich, go. Elise urged. We'll hold them off while you make the call. Just make sure our message gets through. The weight of their sacrifice hit Friedrich hard, but he knew they couldn't let their efforts be in vain. He nodded, swallowed hard, and rushed to the radio, frantic with urgency. He switched it on and began to fumble with the dials, pulse racing as he connected with their command. But as he hit the button to transmit, the entrance to the chamber burst open, and a group of armed men spilled inside. The allies had found them. Their leader roared, gun raised. Friedrich's heart dropped. The moment they had fought for was slipping away. Friedrich froze at the sight of the armed men blocking the escape route, their grim expressions reflecting the tension of the moment. His breath hitched in his throat as he realized how close they were to complete disaster. Klaus shouted, instinctively pushing Elise behind a stack of crates, his body shielding her as he reached for his weapon. The intruders had no intention of hesitating. They surged into the room, guns raised, their movements swift and practiced. The leader barked, a cruel smile stretching across his face. Yuri surrounded. There's nowhere to run. Friedrich's mind raced. He was acutely aware that the plans for the Sterngear, the very essence of their engineering prowess, were still unsecured, lying exposed on the table beside the radio. A frantic glance between Klaus and Elise ignited a flicker of determination. There had to be a way out of this. Hold steady, Friedrich, Klaus whispered, his eyes narrowing as he calculated their next move. We can't let them take us alive. With every ounce of courage, Friedrich began to think of their options. The radio was still buzzing softly, a potential lifeline amidst the chaos. Fighting through the instinct to flee, he knew they had to act fast before the intruders figured out their purpose. Elise's fingers twitched as she readied her pistol, poised to defend their position. If we can just hold them off long enough, she began, but the words faded as the leader's voice cut through the tension again. What is it going to be? You can either surrender and face the consequences or die here like the fools you are. Friedrich's heart thudded in his chest. The choice before them was agonizing, but he could feel the weight of his responsibility to protect their innovations and their country. We can't let them have the plans, he said firmly, his voice steady even as fear coursed through him. The leader stepped closer, his gun aimed squarely at Friedrich. You think your country will save you, Yuri fighting a losing battle. That was it. The words hung in the air, igniting a fire within Friedrich. No, we were not losing. He could feel the adrenaline surging through his veins. We were just getting started. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged for the radio, desperately pressing buttons as he shouted, Klaus, Elise, cover me. The crack of gunfire erupted around him as Klaus and Elise sprang into action. Elise's shots rang out like thunder, targeting the intruders with precision, while Klaus moved swiftly to flank the enemy from the side. The room erupted into chaos. Friedrich could barely hear his own heartbeat over the cacophony, but he forced himself to focus on the radio. He frantically dialed a frequency, praying they could reach their command before it was too late. Come on, he muttered under his breath. The lead intruder, Realizing the danger posed by the radio, shouted to his comrades, "Stop them, they can get that message out." Friedrich's fingers danced over the dials, heart racing as he managed to connect with a frequency. "We are under attack at the safe house. We need immediate backup. The Allies are closing in." Friedrich, Klaus shouted, taking cover behind a crate as bullets whizzed past. Just as Friedrich pressed the send button, the radio emitted a loud crackle, and for a brief moment he heard a voice responding. "We resending help. Hold your position." "Did you hear that?" Friedrich shouted, hope surging through him. The leader of the intruders cursed, frustration etched across his face. "We can't let them escape." He motioned for his men to push forward, anger fueling their aggression. Klaus and Elise fought valiantly, their resolve unwavering as they fired back at the encroaching forces. But the odds were quickly stacking against them, and the room felt as though it were closing in. Friedrich glanced back at the plans spread out on the table, a stark reminder of what was at stake. They could not let these men touch them. Klaus yelled, "We need to regroup." Elise nodded, moving swiftly to cover Friedrich as they made their way toward a smaller doorway leading deeper into the bunker. They had to escape, to survive and keep the plans safe. They pushed through the door and into a narrow corridor, running as quickly as possible. The sounds of gunfire faded, replaced by the echo of their footsteps reverberating off the concrete walls. Friedrich's mind raced with thoughts of the plan. "We can set up an ambush further down the corridor," he suggested, his voice low but filled with intensity. "If we can stall them, it might buy us time," agreed, Klaus said, his eyes focused ahead. They reached a small chamber at the end of the corridor, cluttered with tools and equipment, the faint light flickering ominously. They quickly barricaded the entrance, hastily stacking crates against the door. "Get ready," Klaus said, his voice steady despite the impending confrontation. "We'll take them by surprise." Friedrich nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he prepared himself for the next wave of attackers. They could not allow the Allies to take their secrets, not now when they were so close to a breakthrough in warfare. As the sound of footsteps echoed outside the door, Friedrich felt a surge of clarity. They were fighting for their future, for a Germany that could stand strong against its enemies. The door rattled as the intruders reached their makeshift barricade. Friedrich glanced at Klaus and Elise, their faces determined and resolute. "On my mark," Klaus whispered. The door burst open with a loud crash, and the enemies poured into the room. "Get them," the leader shouted. But before he could take another step, Klaus and Elise sprang into action, firing their weapons with precision. Friedrich steadied his aim, his heart racing, as he joined the fray. Bullets flew, ricocheting off the walls, and the chaos of battle engulfed them. They fought fiercely, each of them determined to protect their homeland and the innovations they had worked so hard to develop. The air was thick with tension, the sounds of conflict echoing through the bunker as they pushed back against the intruders. Suddenly, the sounds of sirens blared from outside, an unmistakable sign that reinforcements were arriving. The tide was turning. Friedrich shouted, a renewed vigor surging through him. The intruders paused, their confidence wavering as they realized they were no longer in control. Klaus seized the moment, charging forward and firing at the lead intruder. The man stumbled back, and with a final push, Klaus took him down. The remaining enemies exchanged frantic glances, their morale shattered as they realized their plan had failed. In that moment of hesitation, Friedrich and his allies pressed forward, capturing the intruders and securing the air. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the corridor as their reinforcements arrived, soldiers rushing in to assist. Friedrich felt a swell of relief wash over him. They had held the ground, and they would live to fight another day. As the Allies were apprehended and the chaos subsided, Friedrich turned to Klaus and Elise, their faces smeared with sweat and dust but shining with triumph. "We did it," he said, disbelief mingling with joy. But their battle was far from over. While they had saved the plans for the Sturmgewehr and secured their immediate safety, the war was still raging across Europe. The secret weapons they had developed would soon be a pivotal part of a larger struggle, one that would echo throughout history. In that moment, Friedrich realized the true cost of war and innovation. They were not just fighting for victory, they were fighting for the future, for the very essence of what it meant to defend their homeland against adversity. As they emerged from the bunker, Friedrich took in the sights of Berlin, battered but unbroken. The war was far from over, but the determination to push forward was stronger than ever. They would fight, innovate, and defend, laying the groundwork for a legacy that would shape the world. Together, they had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. The echoes of their actions would resonate for time, intertwining with the stories of nations, forever marking the chapter of a war that had changed the course of history.